I'm Christy Johns from Australian Online News, and today I'm catching up with Queensland Liberal National Party member David Crisafulli with the state election just weeks away. Now, David, what a year in politics with some unimaginable issues.
Who would have thought a bushfire at the start of the year, prolonged drought out west, and then this disease that we'd never even heard of that's shaped our lives? It's been a tough year for people out there, and that manifests itself in this crazy building we call Parliament.
Yeah, and what have you been doing over the past 2 weeks, and what have you been hearing out there from people?
There's pain, there's uncertainty, and that's understandable. And as we head into an election cycle, what I want to do is move the debate from the here and now and think big, talk about the future. And this disease has changed everything. It's changed the way we work, it changes the way we play, it changes the way we look at where we live and what we do. But we have to find opportunities out of it. You can't go back in time. It's happened. And even when a vaccine happens, and I'm confident it will, but even when that happens, we'll never be the same. So we as a state have to say, well, what are the things that are going to make us and define us in the years to come? And that's what I want the community to do. I want them to think big. I want them to dream into the future. And if you have a look at what makes Queensland special and what has made us special in the past, post-COVID, those natural assets are more important than ever. It's agriculture, it's tourism, it's manufacturing, it's mining. Those things are more important than ever, and we've got them in abundance. We've just got to learn how to use them wisely and know how to keep people safe but make a dollar at the same time.
Yeah, and you were born and raised in Queensland, so what future would you like to see for Queenslanders?
I want a Queensland where people can live, work and play, get an education here, do a trade here, that they don't have to pack their lunchbox and go. But I also want this to be the state where people look towards and say, that's the opportunity for me and my family. And when Queensland was at its best, either during that golden period of the 80s or in the early 2000s, we did it on the back of interstate migration. Now, at the moment, clearly people aren't coming from interstate, but there will come a time when the borders are open and there will come a time when coronavirus is behind us. I want people who are sitting in their lounge room in Victoria in a freezing cold winter or paying a massive mortgage in Western Sydney to say, hey, we don't have to live shoulder to shoulder with our neighbour. We don't have to pack our lunchbox and go into a CBD and shoulder to shoulder with people, and we can live a different life. And if this has taught us nothing else, it's that you don't have to be in a CBD. You don't have to work the same way that you always have. I think Queensland's got an opportunity, and not just Brisbane, but Queensland across the board. There are major opportunities, and if we get agriculture and mining right particularly, this state can soar again.
And as Shadow Minister for Tourism, what are you seeing in that sector, especially in the area of the Gold Coast?
A mixed bag, and it's an incredibly good question. It's feast or famine. So I look at an area like Cairns, which has traditionally relied on international tourism, but also high volume, low yield tourism. I've never seen Cairns hurt as bad as it is now. And Cairns has been through a pretty tough time, but it's really, really doing it tough. Gold Coast is also not going so well at the moment. Same dynamics, high international tourism. But many of the smaller venues, many of those within driving distance, particularly in the southeast, where there's a lot of people who have rallied behind the flag, and that's what Queenslanders do. You ask them to do something, you ask them to be patriotic, and they'll step up to it. So on the back of that, people have taken day trips, they've gone for long weekends, they're taking a couple of weeks, they're going Tuesday to Friday to places they've never been before. So places like the Granite Belt in Stanthorpe, one of the places most fond to near my heart, it's going superbly well at the moment. Not everyone's so lucky. So what I want is to use this time to rally people to continue that. When things change and overseas is again an option, rather than go over to Thailand or Fiji or Bali or wherever, how about you go to Cairns or the Whitsundays or go to Magnetic Island off Townsville? So that's the way we have to change the conversation. We also then have to say, how can we bring people here? And part of that is new offerings, and we need to find a way to make the most of our natural environment. That's going to be key in the post-COVID era. And the other one is the way we market tourism. And I don't believe that a model that you do everything out of Brisbane works. I would rather see individual regions market their point of difference into the area that means something to them.
So what is the LNP's border stance? We've seen people barred from funerals, we've seen families divided and some quite sad cases. If the LNP is voted in October, will the borders open? Do you think they're going to open anytime soon?
You'll get consistency and compassion on those things, and that's been sadly missing, and some of those stories have been devastating. A young girl from a city that hasn't had a case in 2 months, unable to be privately escorted to go and say goodbye to her father at a funeral. That doesn't save any virus. That's just being pig-headed. So you'll get consistency and compassion. But when it comes to borders, it's a simple case, and that is it can't be set and forget. So when we were saying to the Premier, are you going to open the borders? That was her roadmap that said border opening in July. We held her to account. She opened the borders in July and then subsequently closed them when things flared up. That's the way it has to be. And there will continue to be incidents where things spike and go down, and you have to be nimble, and it can't be set and forget. And I think if that happens, people will have faith in the system. Now, hopefully there's a vaccine, and when that happens, we no longer have to debate that. But in the meantime, we can't take the approach that we will never, ever get back to some form of normality, because people will run out of money. They'll also run out of mental health capacity, and that's the other side of the argument. We've got to keep our people healthy and safe from the virus. But there's another side of health too, and that is people's mental well-being, their social connectivity, the ability to earn a living, go home after a day's work. Those things are equally important. That's the balance that has to be found.
Do you think the Premier is failing to see that human side and listening to health too much? Or
look, I understand the pressure she's under, but she's the leader of the state. And what's not acceptable is for her to say, well, it's not my decision, it's her decision. That no one expects or respects that. The Premier has to make the ultimate decision. And part of that involves taking good health advice, part of that takes good mental health advice, part of that is good economic advice. And that's what a leader does. What a leader doesn't do is throw somebody under the bus. What a leader doesn't do is say, oh, wish I could help, but sorry, that's somebody else's decision. And that's disappointing. The other thing that's disappointing is to say that one person is more valuable than someone because they have money or status. That's not the Queensland I want to live in. The Queensland I want to live in is one that looks at things objectively, where someone who is a safe option to go and say goodbye to their grieving father is worth as much as a movie star. That's the sort of Queensland we should believe in.
So what policies does the party have that sets it apart from Labor?
For starters, we're going to supercharge the economy through things like agriculture. Now, farmers have been demonised in this state, and that's got to stop. Most farmers, the vast majority, are good, honest people who just want certainty to be able to earn a living and respect the land that they have for many years. There hasn't been a dam built in this state for nearly 2 decades, and the last one we built is being teared down at the moment, and that's sad. But we also need to bust congestion in places like the southeast where people can't get to work. We need to make sure that our health response, not just for coronavirus, but across the board, is world leading. Education, let's get back to the basics. There is a clear choice and a clear difference, and I want people to sit and objectively look and say, this election isn't about the next couple of months with coronavirus, it's about the next decade. And if we get it right, if we can rekindle that spirit that Queensland has, we know that it has, and we know that Queenslanders have, well then that interstate migration will happen again, and your kids can have a job, and unemployment, which is the highest in the nation at the moment, won't be here anymore. That to me is a great source of embarrassment when you look at us and say we've got the highest unemployment in the nation. That shouldn't be the case. We've been blessed with natural resources. Let's go and grab it and make it happen.
And of course, the seat of Broadwater is one of the most beautiful. Do you feel safe in that seat?
There's no such thing as a safe seat. Ask Tony Abbott what a safe seat is. If you don't respect your local community, if you don't do the work on the ground in the modern era, there's no gimmies. It's no different to a rugby league competition. The moment you think that you're going into a game and that's the wooden spooners, that's when you wake up with a nasty bruise on the eye. So I take every day and I treat every voter with respect, whether they vote for me or not. I'm their member of parliament. I serve them the best I can. And at election time, I like to put my record forward and say, this is me, this is why I'd like another opportunity, and God willing, that'll happen.
And do you have an opinion on how it's all going to play out? I mean, I expect we might see some big swings because of those big issues and the anger in the community.
There's the days of a consistent swing appear to be over. Different issues move different voters in different seats. We've seen that. I've seen that at all levels of government, particularly in the last decade. How that manifests itself, no one knows. What we have to keep doing is doing two things. One is sell a vision for the state, the things I spoke about, agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, mining, sell our vision for that, and then seat by seat contrast why our candidates have something to offer as local people. Both of those factors are important. Get one right and one wrong, and a seat that you think's in the bag can disappear, and vice versa. If you do the work on the ground, often that can lead to results that you don't expect. So it's going to be a tough election. Nobody has, for any way, shape or form thinks it's a done deal. We've got some work to do, but I'm confident we're putting forward our best foot at the right time.
So what do the next 5 or 6 weeks look like for you?
Looks like a lot of travel, a lot of sweat, and a lot of nights with a few hours sleep. But it'll be worth it if we can get it right. And we owe it to the people of Queensland to be a government that is mature and responsive and gives opportunities for their kids to get back to work. And we owe it to Queensland to actually deliver an LNP government that is a two-term government. We haven't seen, it's been since the late 80s since we've won consecutive elections, and we have to get it right. It's been a quarter of a century, basically, that this state's been under Labor rule, with the exception of a couple of very small pauses. Now, for the sake of those industries that I spoke about, we owe it to those Queenslanders to get it right, and God willing, we will.
Now, on a more personal level, you are a family man and doing lots and lots of travel and holding lots of portfolios. How do you unwind? How do you juggle all these things?
It's tough, but the little things are what matters when you're trying to balance a crazy life. But my life's no different to someone who's running their own small business at the moment under all the pressures of coronavirus. My life is no different to a mum who's trying to get 3 kids ready for school and at the moment's half watching this on an iPad because the kids are screaming and trying to get things ready. Everybody lives busy lives. My only advice, I try to find a little bit of time every morning for exercise, and that somehow sets my brain in a little bit of a decent place, and where I can pinch quality time with the girls to do that. Other than that, the life of a politician is no different to the life of anyone else, only we're a little bit more in the public eye. As my dad describes it, Hollywood for ugly people.
What's your exercise of choice?
Gym these days. I loved running, but I've got one knee that says to me that old men shouldn't run. So gym, and sometimes I go to a cardio class, and then I realise that I prefer the gym. So that's life. Provided it's something every day, heart rate goes up, and that then justifies a couple of sneaky beers on the weekend.
And you, of course, started your career in journalism and were a news presenter. Yeah. So you must have known all these questions I was going to ask you. Can you give us a example of your news voice if you were to call the election?
No. My news days are over. I often walk past and look down on Speaker's Green where we are right now, and I always look down and say, I don't miss that pack trying to get the question in and being berated by some politician with an ego the size of Texas. No. I'll leave that to you.
It must have set you up for this career in politics, though.
Yeah, but different people come to this building with different skills, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And that's not just from one side of politics. One side of politics doesn't have that mortgage, but people from different backgrounds bring a different point of view. So I know in our party room we've got a few ex-police officers, we have small business people, we've got lawyers, we've even got a rugby league referee. Now, if you're looking for a diversity of career choice, well, there it is. That brings a good mix of people, mums, dads, grandparents, That's what you want in a parliament, and that's how you get the contest of ideas. You don't want one group of people. You don't want one set of views. You want that contrast. You want that healthy debate, and that leads to better democracy.
And to you, what makes a good leader? And do you think Deb Frecklington has the power and the loyalty behind her to push forward and win this election?
She's led a very unified team, and the greatest example of that is she's been the leader for nearly 3 years, and that shadow cabinet hasn't leaked once. Now, if you can find me an example of someone in opposition with that level of respect anywhere in the country, I'd be stunned. And that's an example of the people behind her burning to win and the respect she's held. And I think the more Queenslanders see of her, the more they see someone who's competent and focused. Not a career politician, not someone who's arrogant. You don't see her waving her arms and carrying on, but she's focused. And heaven knows right now we need a change in leadership. We need someone who won't say, I blame that person there beside me, someone who'll step up to the plate. And I think we're ready for government, and I think Queenslanders deserve it.